What's good? What's good? What's good? YouTube. It is your girl Trisha checking back in with the afternoon message. And today, what I want to talk about is aligning with the eye of your own storm. Ooh, yes. When you having to align with the eye of your own storm. Because there's going to come a time in your life when it's just like, dang, life is breaking you down. When you start realizing that the failures is just a possibility compared to what's going on with your reality, it's just like, whoa, what's holding me in this season? When it seems like the wrong choices can lead you off a course in life, or you just recognize that you don't recognize yourself anymore, and you're just like, what? Why am I feeling this way? What is going on in this present moment? When the heartbreaks leave you broken, abandoned, unseen, unworthy, when you start looking at everything around you and you just like, everything becomes a distraction. And you're like, why am I being distracted in this season when everything is supposed to be aligning you, right? But that's when you're in the eye of your own storm. This is when you got to double down on your prayers. Why am I saying you got to double down on your prayers in this season? Because right in the middle of it, right in the middle of all of this, that is where God is able to meet us at. It's a reminder that the storm might not even be over, that the chaos is still kicking up, that the problems that you're having, whether they're internally or externally, they're still there. They're still there. But the beauty of that is God gets to come and meet us in the middle of it. He gets to come and meet us. He ain't going to take you out of the storm, but he comes in the middle of the storm. He comes in the middle so he can be like, I'm standing right here with you. I'm right here with you. I have the faith that you don't have. He said, I got the extra strength that you don't have in this moment. He said, that's why I got to stand in the eye of the storm with you. He said, because I don't want your faith to waver in this season. He said, I want to be right there. So when I have to help shift your perspective, I got to be right there to guide you. He said, I got to be right there to light the path so that you know that there is no end. He said, I did not get you out this far to leave you. He said, but I got to make sure that you can understand where you have a season where your faith is being tested. He said, so everything got to kick up at you. He said, and then when they think you starting to wither, you starting to grab hold of that, they got to throw a little bit more at you because it's all about breaking you. He said, but that's okay because I'm right here with you. He said, now that we're in the middle of this, he said, now you understand you're not just surviving. You're not just surviving right now in this moment. He said, baby, right now what we're doing is we are realigning. This is the point where you found your light. This is the point where you no longer disappointed by just the things that are happening. He said, but instead, I'm showing you how to stand in it. He said, I'm showing you how to stand in it. He said, those external winds that's kicking up in your life right now and the internal battles that you're facing right now, he said they're different right now. They're different because right now they're different because I'm centering you in it. He said, I'm centering you in it. He said, and when you get to this point where he's centering you in your chaos, he said it's because right now he needs you planted. This is your planting season right now. He said the other stuff was just the extra work because I had to kick out the old dust. Excuse me. He said I had to kick out that old dust that was in there. He said I had to get rid of the stuff that made you not believe in me the same way. I had to get rid of the stuff that made you not even know what your worth was in this season. He said I had to kick all of that out so we can get right to where it is. He said right where the meat is. He said he cut off all the fat, all the stuff that he knew it wasn't finna serve you. He said I had to get rid of all of that. He said, because now that I got you aligned right where I want you to be, he said, he said, so now we're in a place where the lost, the broken, tired of fighting. He said, this isn't the point where we just get up. He said, we're not giving up in this season. He said, this is the point now that you have to watch my unseen hand at work. He said, because the storm in this season is not going to be what defines you. He said, but what you do in this storm and who you become in this storm will be what defines you. He said it's not enough for him to take it and make some chaos and stir up your whole pot, make everything look like you don't know what's going on. He said, I didn't do all of this mess for you to remain the same at the end. He said, I did this because I needed you to shift your perspective. I needed you to shift yourself in this season. He said, I needed you to get to a point where I can eat in this. Ooh. I said, what? He said, yeah, this is eating season. He said, I got to be able to eat that. He said, the only way I can do that is if I got rid of everything that I couldn't use about you. Ooh. I said, you couldn't. He said, what I couldn't use about you. He said, I don't care what man finna do in this season. He said, I don't care where people realizing that you put up boundaries at in this season. He said, I don't care what the people were saying about you in this season. He said, when I'm causing the chaos, when I'm causing the confusion, he said, it's because I had to hide you at the same time. He said, if I let them see exactly who you were, they would have tried to destroy you. He said, that's why I had to hide you. He said, in conversations where people should have known you could have excelled in them conversations, he said, I had to shut your mouth. He said, I had to make you just dizzy in certain areas. He said, because if I would have let them people tap all the way in, he said they would have used it for their own selfish gains. He said, but in this season, baby, in this season, he said anything that he had to hide, when he's bringing it out of you, when he's giving you a voice, when he's lifting you up, when he's making your stance, he said, can't nobody tell him nothing about what he's doing with you. He said, you're going to have to let these people say what they got to say about you. He said, at the end of the day, did you get your transformation? He said, because when you had to sit down and go through this chaos, it was for me to make sure I sent you through a transformation. He said, when you thought you were in the storm and you thought, damn, this is the end, I know I'm about to be wiped out now. He said, baby, that's when we started the transformation. He said, because then at some point you had to realize where your worth was. He said, so when these people started trying to play with you and you had to go within yourself and tell yourself that you knew better, he said, I had something to work with. I had a chance to come and sit with you and meet with you and tell you, okay, baby, I see where we're going with this. He said, oh, okay, now you want me to fight with you. He said, ooh. He said, in the process of this fight, he said, you got to make sure that vengeance is mine. He said, ain't it funny how you got to sit there and minister to your enemies? He said, ain't it funny when you have the people who were looking down at you now just coming to you? He said, you want to know why they drawn to you? He said, because I turned on your light. And now that they see that your light's on, they're trying to come, whether they're good or bad intentions. He said, they got to come see what this light is that's on. He said, and what you going to show them? Because in this season, he only wants you to show his grace, his mercy. Ooh. He said, so even though they thought they was finna do you wrong, even though they thought they could play on you and they can do all of this, he said, in this season, baby, you still got to show these people grace. I said, grace? He said, yeah. Some of them, he said, in this season, you might got to feed them with a long-handed spoon and let them know that you still love them. You can still feed them and you can still show them what you needed to do. He said, but in the other ones, he said, it's going to require you to humble yourself. He said, you got to humble yourself. He said, because when they come, your feelings that they stirred up in your heart will be there. They will be there, and you're going to bend and look. He said, but in the season, he said, instead of you just being active with it, he said, I need you to be proactive and just hush your mouth and let them see my spirit. He said, because I can't bless you if you over there cursing them. He said, so he don't want you to have that double. He said, ooh, a double-minded man is unstable in all 8 ways. He said, don't get double standard because you see that they hurt you. He said, pray for them. Pray for them. He said, because I already lit your way. He said, they already see your light. They already see your grace that's on you. He said, the only thing you can do for these people is pray for them. But he said, I got to have you keep moving. He said, in this season, don't get mad when something ain't working out. He said, just keep hitting the plow, the one he gave you. If he told you that that's your schooling, do your schooling. If that's you ministering to your kids, minister to your kids. If that's you about your business, handle your business. He said, because everything else he's going to work out. He said, don't get sidetracked thinking about no boo. Don't get sidetracked thinking about them bills. He said, no. Write a plan down. He said, because some of it you might have to go without for a while. He said, but it ain't forever. He said, don't let these temporary things be the thing that defines you. He said, no, when you're in your transformation, he said, what defines you is how you change, how you transfer during these moments. That is what's going to define you. He said, don't make these temporary plans making permanent decisions. He said, don't do this just off of your emotions. He's not asking us to work out of our emotions in this season. He said, I'm asking you to work with wisdom, with guidance, with my supplications. He said, let me lead the way. He said, he said, if you let him direct your path, if you let him be the front and center of your life, he said, everything that you're looking for, he will give it to you, but you got to step into the right arena. He said, stop working out of your strength. He said, he sees, he knows. He said, can't you feel when you working out of your strength? He said, your mind get weary, you get hasty. He said, but haste make waste. He said, don't make no waste in this season when he telling you he got you. He said, all he wants you to do is remain still. Sit still. He said, sit still and you can see my salvation. He said, if you can sit still long enough, you can see his salvation. But when you start looking at it and you looking at the deadline, and he said, and you don't think he gonna come through, he said, well, if that's what you sent out, that's what you get. He said, because he's asking you to keep his faith. So if you have enough faith that he's going to do these things for you, he said, well, then sit down and let him do it. He said, well, sit down then and let him do it. If he's telling you this is the plan, he said, I ordered your steps. He said, when I told you to make this plan, did you make this plan? He said, when I told you to minister to them kids, did you minister to them kids? He said, I give you strategic plans. I give you strategic things in life that I want you to do. He said, and if you done them, you know you done them. So he said, you shall reap your reward. He said, but I'm not asking for you just to do it because you're trying to go. He said, no. He said, just don't go through the motions. He said, when you do things for him, you should have thanksgiving in your heart. You should be thankful that he called you to do these things. Be thankful he gave you them children. Be thankful he put a roof over your head. Be thankful he put food on your table. Be thankful he put gas in your car. Be thankful that he gave you a voice. Be thankful that he gave you these legs that you can still get up and move with. He said, so whenever you're doing something and you're saying it in my name, he said, do this with some thanksgiving in you. He said, so many of us start taking these things for granted until you ain't got it. He said, you took people for granted until they ain't there. He said, well, at what cost? At what cost? He said, be careful how you people treat you. Be careful how you treat people. He said, because he already lifted up a standard. He said, he already lifted up a standard. He said, and even if you don't see what he's doing, even if you don't feel it, what he's doing, he said, at the end of the day, you got to trust him anyway. Can you trust him anyway? Can you trust him despite of in this season? He said, because that's what he's looking for. His despite all people. That's who he's looking for. Despite that you're going through chaos, can you trust me? Despite the fact that you feeling like you're inadequate, do you trust me? He said, because when you get in my presence, I take those things off. He said, because I build up your confidence. I build up your worth. I build up your understanding. I build up your vocabulary. He said, when you seek me, I start making you seek other things about you. He said, but the only way I'm going to know if that's what's going on is if I can listen to what's coming out of your mouth. And if when I'm listening, what's coming out of your mouth, did it change? Did anything change? I said, okay, baby. He said, a lot of us then got so used to living in chaos that we don't know what love is no more. He said, but if you sit with him and let him make love with you, he said, baby, he going to show you something different. Ain't y'all ready for something different? He said, ain't y'all ready for something different? I said, yes, Lord. He said, in this season, he said, if you don't do nothing else, he said, sit with him. Sit with him and let him talk to you. He said, it might come. He said, when you first start out, you might not even hear nothing. He said, but as you keep sitting and as you keep lowering all the extra voices in your head, he said his voices start coming into your play. And he said when his voice start coming into play, you're going to be able to hear the plays that he's making with you. And then when you start walking in them plays and you start tasting it and you see that it's good, trusting in the Lord. He said, when you trust in me, baby, you're going to taste and see that I'm good. He said, and then when you get to this point, if you tasting and seeing that I'm good, he said, then you're going to understand it's a fear that's going to come up over you, that if you ain't in my presence, you fear that the taste you get in your mouth ain't good no more. He said, and when you get to that point, he said, baby, you starting to get to the spot where, you making room for me. He said, I might have came in a little bit where you rented some space out to me and your faith got teetered and you kept going back and forth. He said, but then you got to a place in your life. He said that you let me become your owner. He said, and when you let me become your owner, he said, you passed my prerequisites. He said, so now that you passed my prerequisites and we got an understanding, he said, now I'm giving you wisdom after wisdom as wisdom. He said, sometimes when I'm petting wisdom on you, he said, don't you realize it come in numbers? He said, then all of a sudden you could be reading a sign that you go past. He said, I send you confirmation through different people that you don't even think can give you confirmation. He said, everything is because I'm trying to order a certain step in you. He said, in this season, he said, pray for some new eyes. Pray for my tongue. Pray for my ears so that you can hear me. He said, because in this season, as I'm ordering your steps, he said, these is guided steps. These are guided steps. He said, these are called strategic steps. He said, and he don't want you to miss his strategic step in this season. He said, so when he moves, he's trying to make sure you know to move. He said, I'm lighting your way. He said, and as I'm lighting your way, he said, don't you feel like you're starting to get a little lighter? He said, don't you feel like it's getting a little lighter? He said, you know why it's getting a little lighter? He said, because all of that old skin had to come off. He said, because one thing he knew about life is he couldn't make new wine in old wineskins. He said, but when you tap into him, when you got with him, when you start understanding him, he said, baby, he started renewing you. You started to get a glow about you. People who in your past didn't know who you was, when they started seeing you, he said, that's my transformation. That's my transformation in you. He said, because when you got in my presence, he said, I gave you a new walk. I give you a new talk. I give you a new stride. He said, and when I'm giving you all these new things, he said, it ain't no way I'm going to have you go back to what was old. He said, I had to close them doors on you. He said, because I had to make sure clink, clink, they was locked. He said, I did not want you to go back. He said, ain't nothing back there. And he ain't trying to have you turn into a pillar of salt because you trying to turn backwards when he's saying keep your eyes straight. He said, when you keep your eyes straight, you know where you going. He said, but when you start walking backwards, you can't see back there. You're going to fall. You're going to stumble. You're going to trip because ain't nothing back there. He said, but when you got your eyes on him, and when y'all being in a line, and he said, and when he gave you a target, and when you see the target and he see the target and you going up there to hit that target, he said he needs all eyes on deck. He said he needs you right here, front and center. He said, I need you to stare down that. I need you to stare down that. He said, let them know I see you like you see me. You coming for me, I'm coming for you. He said, because at this point, what you seeking is seeking you. And if you trying to seek what you're seeking, he said, baby, it's seeking you. It's right there. He said, but just like it's staring at you, you staring at it. He said, he said, I'm trying to make you polarized. He said, come on, baby, don't be a magnet where you get so close you got to fight before you clink on up in there. He said, know what season we in. He said, this is not the time to get worried in your own well-doing. Rather have confidence. He said he is not a God that gives you a spirit of fear. He is not a God that's going to give you a spirit of worry. Instead, he gives you confidence. He gives you the strength. He gives you measures beyond what you're believing. He said, but in this season, you got to come out your head. Come up out your head. He said, you got something in there, but not what he got for you. He said, this requires you to step into a whole nother realm. He said, because sometimes when you in your own head, your mind start playing tricks on you. He ain't trying to have you in trickery season. He don't have time for you to second guess. He said either you will or you won't. What you want. He said, because in this season, what you won't do, he's finding another who will. So either you going to submit and rise up or you going to forfeit. He said, and he ain't sending out no forfeits. He said, baby, why would he have you go through all of these trials and tribulations in life for you to give up? He said, don't give up. He said, right now, you right here. He said, you could be one step away. He said, don't throw in your towel. This is not the season to throw in your towel. He said, right here, right now, this is your time. He said, but he need to know if you're going to press. He said, right now we are in a battle. And for anybody who's a fighter, he said, throw another punch. He said, you're going to have to throw another punch. He said, because right now the enemy ain't finna let up on you. He said, right now the enemy throwing a punch. He said, you throw one right back at him. He said, every time he throw one at you, you throw one right back. He said, this ain't no season for you to lay down. He said, get back up in this fight. He said, you're going to have to fight for this. He said, who? He said, the violent take it by force. He said, what you going to do? If you knowing they finna take it by force. He said, baby, in this season, force better meet force. He said, because when you partner with him, he finna overthrow this. He said, but you gonna have to get a little ruthless with me in this season if you trying to get what I got for you. Ooh, I said, yes, baby. I don't know what y'all do. What y'all gonna tell him? I tell him, oh, yes, sir. He said, in this season, he said, right now when we are in a warfare, he said, not only are you doubling down on your prayers, he said, but baby, every time he's sending a punch your way, he said, you better be sending your shots right back. Anxiety kick up, you better have something for that. You got to let that go in this season. He said, you got to walk through them doors, walk through them gates. And he said, keep your eyes forward. Keep your eyes. Oh, he said, this ain't no season for you to close your eyes and trying to throw no wicked. He said, you got to hit that target. He said, the only way you finna hit that target is if you got your eyes right where they need to be. In this season, he said, keep your eyes right where they need to be. He said, because right now we are in the eye of our own storms. The eye of it. That means you in the thick of it. We in the thick of it. And he said, and right now when you in the thick of it, he said, I'm trying to make sure you know how to ride your wave and get past your own current. He said, but in this season, the only way you finna get through that current is if you keep your eyes on me. Because he ain't trying to get you swallowed up. Ooh, I said, okay, baby. I hope y'all tapping in. Y'all understand what's going on in this season. He said, because when you in the thick of this storm, you going to have to eat that. You're going to have to throw them punches. He said, do you know how to bob and weave in this season? He said, this ain't no cute and pretty season. He said, this is nasty. This is ruthless. This is rough. What you want to do? That's what he said in this season. What is you finna do? He said, because he looking for his soldiers. And his soldiers can't get scared when they knowing they call for a front line. He said, did he pick the right teammate? He said, because this is the season. This is the season that this storm is either finna make or break you. He said, and he don't want you to go back into your old self-sabotaging ways because you getting out of character. He said, and anytime fear come up, you got to know that is not a message from him. Anytime your anxiety is kicking up, that is not a message from him. Anytime your depression is starting to kick up, that is not a message from him. He said, in this season, throw it down at me. And then when you get down there and pray about it, he said, don't get up until you feel my peace. He said, and if that takes you a few hours, he said, well, then you down there on your face right now for a few hours. He said, but until you get his peace, don't you get up out that spot. He said, stay down there and keep praying. He said, because as you praying and his Father is making utterance on, and Jesus is making utterance on your behalf, he said, then you gonna know you gonna get your breakthrough. He said, ain't no telling. He said, it could take a few minutes and then it might take you a few hours. He said, it depends on how bad that stronghold is over you. He said, because at this season, he knocking all that dust up off of you. He said he got to get rid of all them dang on sins and all of them. He said it's shedding. He said you're shedding. And he said, and as you shedding, he said he got to make sure it's all the way gone. It's y'all girl, Trisha, checking back in. Today, I had just, y'all know my heart must have been heavy today. But when I was talking with him, he said, baby, that's because we in the eye of the storm. I said, the eye of the storm. And I had to go back and I was like, why am I? He said, yeah, because right now you fighting. He said, we fighting. We fighting for the new version of you. He said, and at the same time, I having to get rid of the old version of you. He said, but sometimes you got to understand in this warfare, he said, sometimes it get a little tricky because you think it's all over with. He said, and you think it's all done. He said, but sooner or later, some stuff try to lay dormant. And when it try to reemerge, he said, it's just like when you got the chicken pox. He said, some of the stuff lay dormant and then it turns into shingles. He said, when the stuff lay dormant, he said, we got to get back on up and tear that up too. He said, because we in a fight, baby. We in a fight for this soul. He said, it ain't just that we wrestling. He is like, no. I know you surrender. He said, I'm worried about that. He said, but then you got to understand that you got sin in you. You were born into sin. He said, and sometimes it tries to kick back up. He said, but I got to make sure you know how to combat that each time. He said, so that way it get easier and easier. He said, we in practice. He said, this is practice mode. He said, that's why we doing this all right now. He said, we getting in this all out now. He said, so when it kick up later and you feel it coming, you know exactly what to do. He said, I'm giving you exact strategic plans. He said, in this season, when you going through these battles, he said, write some of these battles down so you know exactly what's going on. So you can recognize these patterns when they're kicking up and when they calling back to you. He said, write this stuff down because he needs you to know later on it's going to be what helps build your business. All of these different things is different stepping stones. He said, and as they kicking up, he got to make sure that you kicking up too. He said, baby, the fire has just been turned up. The fire had just been turned up. Because the devil know how close you are to a second part of your mountain. He said, and right now when he knows you in the second half of this mountain, he finna throw everything to make sure you slide back down that hill. And he said, baby, put some stake in the ground. He said, did you put some stake in the ground? Oh, baby, he got my spirit on fire. I said, I love it. Sometimes I love it when the challenges start kicking up, because then it start making you have to reevaluate where the crack is in your foundation. Because when the cracks come up, that's when the lights come on, because you start seeing something just ain't the way it was. When the foundation just starts seeming like it was trying to settle down a little bit, and then there go a little crack in the foundation. He said, we gonna tackle that too. He said, this is tackling season. He said, baby, I told you we in a fight. When you're in the eye of the storm, he said, when you start seeing them come on up, he said, we gotta knock that down too. Yeah. He said, we gotta watch what's trying to spring forth in this season. He said, because I ain't taking anything. And he said, I gave you wisdom. I gave you discernment. He said, I'm making sure you turn from them ways. In this season, he said, y'all, we got some stuff on us that he just ain't finna take. He said, he ain't trying to, he said, because he made a promise. He made a promise with Noah. And he said he got to keep his promise. But he said there's some stuff that got to be knocked off in this season. He said that his covenants, the bonds that he made, the things that he spoke to you, he said that's real. It's real. And he said in this season, you're gonna have to anchor down in him, because the fight is over. You getting over this mountain right now. He said it's a fight. He said for some of us, the fight been on you so long that it's so strong. He said it's potent. He said, you ever walked into a room and you knew somebody was in there by the scent that they had on, by that perfume or cologne that they had on? He said that's how your stronghold is. It's trying to linger. He said, so for some of us, he said, I got to keep you right here for a moment. I got to keep you right here in this fire for a moment. He said, because it's still a battling that's happening. He said, and in this battle, he going to have his final say. He going to get his glory. He said, but he want to know what aroma. He said, that's not his aroma that's still circulating though. Ooh, he said, no. He said, sometimes when you smelling things, it's not my aroma. He said, I'm getting it to my aroma. He said, I got to make sure it's fine tuned just the way I need it. He said, because when it's just the way I need it, every provision, every circumstance is going to understand exactly why I had to do it this exact way. He said, each one of us have a different fine tuning. And he said, and when it all come into play, it's going to make a beautiful melody. He said, but I got to get it to that melody. He said, some of us, he's fine tuning so that the sound that echoes back is fine tuned with his melody. It is y'all girl, Trisha. Whew. Yes, it was one of those days. This is just one of those days. He said, just flow with me. Just flow with me in the spirit. He said, sometimes that's what all you can do is just let it flow. He said, sometimes you got to understand exactly where I'm taking you. He said, other times I'm not going to make it so plain. He said, but sometimes I got to give you a strategic message. I got to give you a strategic plan. And he said, right now, when you in the eye of your storm, he said, he just wants you to be able to watch and see where he's taking you. He said, but some of this requires a different language. Some of this requires you to keep your eyes open. Some of this requires for you to be able to fine tune and hear him, which means you got to drown out some stuff. He said in this season, he said, because he's not having you right here in this moment for you to just go back to remaining the same, to go back to old ways, to go back. He said, ain't nothing back there. Don't look back there. Ain't nothing back there. He said, the things that I have for you have to be forward. It has to be in the future. He said, it has to be in front of you. If you're going backwards, he said, then what are you looking for? What is back there? Memories? Old patterns? Worn out things? He said, ain't nothing back there. We looking forward. Yes, I am the owner of Let's Direct Our Own Path, where I do mentorships, where I do one-on-ones, where we do sit down, make strategic plans on how you going to change certain things in your life, how to level up, how to just move forward in life. At the same time, yes, have transitional housing where if you need housing, not only are you getting housing, but you're getting the support that you need. And it's a step-by-step process. So that way you are becoming more sufficient, more reliant, more understanding on how to direct your own path. That way, when you're sitting with God, you understand what that fine-tuned sound look like. In this season, holla at me. Let's meet. Let's connect. I left my email at the bottom. Also, if you're feeling led, I did leave my Cash App. So in this season, go ahead, tap in, sow a seed. And if the message don't resonate with you, go ahead, push the message forward anyway, because there'll be somebody out there who also need the help, who also need the support, and who also need to get a different understanding of life and the storms and the things that they are going through in life. Because sometimes in life, it don't all add up and make sense, but sometimes you need another perspective in order to see exactly where you're going. He said in this season, we got to leave some stuff. And it might hurt. He said, but in this season, sometimes you just got to leave some stuff and just walk away. He said, if it's meant to be, we'll reconnect with that at another time. He said, but right now the focus is on where I need you to be, where I need you to be. He said, I need you to get into these private rooms with me. I need you to come and meet me. I need you to come and sit with me. He said, I got something for you. I got something for you. He said, all I'm asking you to do is come to me. He said, just come in here with me. Come in here and sit with me. He said, because when you come in here and sit with me, I got something for you. Ooh, y'all. Whew. Yes, I'm happy. This is like a whole Dear Diary day. It is your girl. Yes, I'm tapping in. This was a whole freestyle today. It was just like, what is going on? And he was just letting us know this is not the end. This is not the end. He said he did not get us this far for nothing. He said, but it's just it's you just doubling down. Some of us tripling down, 10xing down on our faith in this season. He said, because I understand the things and the provisions in which you need. He said, but that requires a different level of faith. And each one of them levels of faith require a different level of understanding, a different level of wisdom. All he's saying is right now, when he got you in the eye of your storm, he needs you to level up and understand that this requires a different level of fight. He said, because right now when the enemy is kicking up havoc, you got to know how to throw them punches. Yes, yes. Tap in. This is tap in season. It is your girl. Y'all know what to do.